some more analysis on all of those markets. We're joined by Stan Shamu from IG in Melbourne. Stan, great to see you there. Yeah, big story, of course, the weakness of the US dollar. Break it down for us. What's causing that?
Morning, Brady. Absolutely, the main theme in global markets was that the US dollar weakness. Of course, with this shutdown seeming like it's not making any real progress and leaders not really meeting on the first day of the shutdown, it really did look like it was up to the data that was on the wires, and of course some of the Fed members that were commenting on markets yesterday to really drive price action. And I think that the first trigger was perhaps that ADP non-farm payrolls number, which missed consensus of around 180,000. It came in around 166,000, and of course with the current shutdown, this really threatens the official payrolls number being pulled from a release on Friday. So this data was actually carrying a lot more weight than usual, and of course that's why we saw a big reaction to it. Now, of course, with the ADP number, it's always a good indication of the private sector, and of course companies that do use ADP for their payrolls numbers. But of course it's not really as accurate as the official number, but it normally is a good lead indicator of what's going to happen in the official reading. So this leaves us with unemployment claims later today as a bit of a measure or gauge as to exactly where the jobs market is in the US. But what didn't help the US dollar as well was the fact that Fed member Rosengren was on the wires just saying that the current political problems were part of the reason why the Fed didn't decide, why the Fed decided not to taper in September. And of course, going forward, this does bring up concerns that perhaps tapering will be pushed a bit further along, as opposed to by the end of the year, where most of the market was pricing in. And of course, as well, just with Bernanke on the wires and not really hinting towards towards tapering by the end of the year, then it really did weigh on the US dollar, with tapering seeming like it's not going to happen anytime soon. This is obviously negative for the US dollar, and that's exactly what was the main theme in markets last night.
Yeah, and the euro, at 8-month highs against the greenback there. And then, of course, as the ECB met and just continued the course, interest rates to stay low for longer.
Absolutely sharp reversals in most of the risk currencies against the US dollar. The euro was sort of sidelined around 135 heading into the ECB decision. No one was really looking to bid it higher, and it managed to reverse higher to around 136 against the US dollar. Of course, this is the highest level since February, and it's now looking like it might make an attempt to charge towards those February highs at 137.1. The trigger really was, of course, the decision by the ECB to keep rates on hold. But at the same time, Draghi didn't quite, he changed his tone from the last meeting, where he had said they might consider unconventional monetary stimulus for the European economy. And he really shied away from this language and from this tone completely. So this really saw analysts remove expectations of perhaps another LTRO, which was now starting to be priced into the euro. And at the same time, Enrique Letta in Italy managed to pass a confidence vote, and that really removed the risk of a near-term Italian election. So overall, it was quite positive for the euro. There's still a lot coming up. We've got services PMIs for the Eurozone as well later on today, as well as bond auctions for Spain and France. So there's still a lot to look out for on the euro, but in the short term, it does look like it's certainly a positive, in a positive sort of drive, and it could continue to gain against the greenback in the near term as this shutdown continues.
Bringing all of that back to us here in Australia, so what's that going to mean for the local market open?
Yeah, that US dollar weakness has actually turned out to be a blessing for the local market. We're currently calling the market up 0.2% to 5,222. Of course, this US dollar weakness actually prompted a lot of commodities to actually rally yesterday, particularly in the precious metals space, where we saw gains of about 2% and above for gold and silver. So that massive recovery should help support the local precious metals names. Of course, yesterday was a tough day for gold names such as Newcrest. So today we do expect them to do relatively well and outperform their peers. Of course, the iron ore names are also looking for a fairly positive open. BHP's ADR is pointing up 0.8%, so that's a fairly good open for a lot of these iron ore miners. And it's even in the wake of iron ore prices being flat or really not trading because of the China holiday, then this should be a good lead up for that sector. We've got Leighton's to look out for. Of course, their parent company, Hochschiff, actually lost over 7% on allegations of corruption, and we'll have to wait and see how this affects Leighton. But of course, their share price has been doing relatively well over the past few months, and they're actually testing about $20 at the moment, so this might threaten to sort of derail this solid recovery we've been seeing in Leighton's. But of course, there's nothing confirmed really. We just have to wait and see if the company does go into a halt eventually and an official announcement comes out. But for now, there's nothing going on really. It's just all speculation. The only threat to the gains in the local market earlier on today will be Japan. It's pointing lower, and of course, being the biggest market in the region, this might affect Australia as well. There is a little bit of skepticism ahead of tomorrow's BOJ meeting, and should the BOJ not announce any stimulus measures to help counter this sales tax hike, then we could continue to see the yen appreciating, and this would ultimately hurt the Nikkei.
Stan, as always, thank you so much.
Cheers, Bridie.
Stan Shamu there from IG. Stay with us. Coming up on First Business, we'll get a little more on that big performance from gold, best performance in 3 weeks overnight.
What's the bottom line at Nissan? The Navara ST Dual Cab 4x4